Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter, where once again I'm joined by Jamie Castle and Adam Driscoll. Jamie, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Nice to be podding twice in a week for the first time this season. Thanks to the EFL for not moving any of our Saturday games, because it makes it quite difficult if you have a Friday game to do two in a week. But no, all good. Looking forward to hopefully a first Hatters win on the weekend.
And I'm also joined by Adam Driscoll. How are you, Adam?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good, thank you. Exciting to hear some of the news coming out of the club this week. And like Jamie, looking forward to the weekend and hopefully getting 3 points on the board.
And as they both mentioned there, it's a trip to Preston North End this weekend as we face the Preston side with a new manager in charge. Before we get on with it, be sure to follow us on our socials at Oak Road Hatter on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Like, share and subscribe on YouTube and leave a comment with your thoughts of the episode. And if you're listening to an audio version, be sure to rate us 5 stars. We really appreciate all the support and it helps us produce the best content for you. But we'll get straight into things. So it's obviously a trip to Preston, as we mentioned this weekend, to face a Preston side that's had, what at the time of the game will have had their third different manager in their third different game. So for us, it's a bit of stability after what looked like a chaotic start to the season. But compared to them, it's pure stability. So we'll start with what you're expecting from Luton this weekend. Obviously, there's a couple of new faces that have been announced at the time of recording. Potentially another one that we'll get onto a bit later on. But Jamie, what are you sort of expecting from Luton in terms of the players to watch and the lineup Edwards is expected to go with?
I think for me, barring the obvious change in goal, I think I probably expect as we were. I think we started the game really well at Portsmouth, and had we have kept 11 men on the pitch, I would have expected us to go on and get all 3 points. So, of course, made 2 additions as we sit here today, although likely to be a third addition, which we'll come obviously onto into the second half. But I'm probably too early to throw any one of the 3 in early on, probably on the bench, and will allow us to have less academy players on the bench. But yeah, I don't really see any real reason to change it. I think that midfield pairing of Clark and Baptiste are doing okay for what probably won't be our first choice pairing going forwards. But in terms of their appearances at Pompey, I thought they both did very well, and go into a Preston game where, again, as we expect to be so a lot this season, will be the favourites. Preston, I think, have lost the last 7 championship games. Okay, we'll be at 5. We're at the back end of last season, but a Preston side that are really struggling right now and probably are one of a few outside bets for the drop this season. So no, I fully expect to go to Deepdale and assert our dominance as we should be in a side that's just come down from the Premier League.
And it's a Preston side, as you mentioned, that have lost their last 7 league games. But on top of that, they're yet to score this season. They lost 2-0 on the opening day to Sheffield United and then 3-0 in their most recent league match against Swansea. So, Adam, are you expecting a different Preston to what we've seen so far this season? Obviously, they have brought in an experienced manager who knows what he's doing at this level.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, albeit he would have had a few days to work with them, but when the previous manager leaves citing that he can't take the players any further, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth for all of them to hear. Whereas, Heckingbottom's only got to come in and say, I believe in you all, and they will have a lot more belief than they had this time last week. So I do think he'll come in, give them a bit of impetus, probably look at the same formations he was playing at Sheffield United, which was, by all accounts, kind of a 3-5-2 or 3-4-2-1. And that might suit them quite well. I looked at the sort of lineup they've had, and they've had a couple of big centre halves in Jack Watmore and Patrick Bauer on the bench. I imagine one of those guys will come in to deal with our physical threat and particularly Adebayo. But yeah, I think they will be buoyed, and the fact that it's a home game to start against the team, albeit we will be favourites, as Jamie said, but we haven't won a game yet. So I think they'll see it as an opportunity to start the right way under Heckingbottom.
Yeah, and you mentioned there that it's a home game for them, and obviously as a new manager coming in, would we have liked it have taken slightly longer for Heckingbottom to be announced, Jamie? Maybe later this week.
Yeah, I think for me, without a doubt, I think Heckingbottom is probably coming in as one of those new wave of Warnock nowadays, right? I mean, I think he's certainly had his fair share of Championship clubs, and to his credit, he has done relatively well wherever he's been. Okay, yeah, I mean, he was in charge of a pretty dire Blade side last season, but as Wilder showed, he came in and didn't improve them too much, maybe marginally, but overall they were certainly one of the weakest teams in that league last year. So I think it just shows the job that Heckingbottom was doing. And yeah, I think relative to where Preston North End are right now, you have to say it's a good appointment. It's a manager who 2 years ago got promoted automatically out of the league. So for a side that probably has expectations of, I mean, ideally Preston fans probably want mid-table or higher, but if you really look at the light of day for them, it's probably to stay up this season is sort of like the minimum that they want, and he's probably a good guy to do that. He plays a similar system to what they have done previously, so it's not like you're going to come in and sort of ring the changes and go to a flat back four, for example. And you've certainly got players in the squad that have the quality. I mean, Whiteman is a player that 3-4 years ago I would have loved at Luton when he was signed from Doncaster Rovers. Kesler Hayden from Aston Villa, I know he's been at this level, he's got a lot of pace, and someone probably actually, given who our right wing back situation, could have come and done a okay job for us. So they've got players sort of dotted around the side that certainly have the quality at this level. So if Heckingbottom can come in and do what he has done at previous clubs, then they probably will have enough to stay up.
And we'll go on to look a bit more at the Preston side shortly. But first, Adam, I just want to ask you where the key areas for Luton will be in terms of taking advantage of Preston and where our threats will come from.
Yeah, I think Preston have lost Alan Brown, haven't they, this summer to Sunderland, and he was a big player for them in the middle of midfield. So straight away that sticks out to me as an opportunity for us to dominate the game in that area. We highlighted the same thing against Burnley in terms of midfield battle, and we obviously very much lost that battle. But I think, with Clark being there, with Baptiste, with, let's say at the moment, maybe another name or two, potentially being available, to me that stands out as a huge area, and really an opportunity for us to essentially get control of the game from the outset and dictate what's going to happen, really.
I think for me, it's a game that I see being played in both boxes. I mean, if I look at the areas, right, I mean, Preston so far have played a front two, both big Nordic lads up top. So a fair challenge for Mengi and Co to deal with. I think clearly we've got the defensive structure and personnel now to deal with that. Obviously with Simon McGuinness, and then who we've got here with Holmes and Mengi, etc. Waters has done really well, so we've got the ability to deal with it, but we just need to make sure that at set pieces and for any long balls over the top, we're dealing with that. And equally going the other way, I mean, I don't think they've got any centre halves that are blessed with an awful amount of pace. You got Liam Lindsay, who's obviously done really well previously, but probably isn't one of the top centre halves. And then you've got Jack Watmore on the bench, who I don't believe is that mobile, albeit a good defender 1v1. So just looking at getting in behind them, sort of with Eli and Chio and Chong, I think if we can, then we can have a lot of joy. So I think generally, as I said, it's a game that will be won in both boxes, and if we can be clinical whilst also being short at the back, then I would hope that we can come away with all 3 points.
And obviously, you mentioned there that they've got two big Nordic strikers that could cause some problems in the box. Adam, can you see someone like Tom Holmes or even McGuinness coming in to help deal with that?
I think potentially. I think maybe McGuinness not straight in would be my hunch, but I could be wrong. I don't think he's had a huge pre-season at Cardiff. I think he played a bit of a League Cup game and scored, but so maybe not McGuinness. But I think really, the fact that Bell's back now, he puts himself about a bit as well, physically wise. We've seen that Walters can match, what most strikers can throw at him, or the ones that we've played so far, certainly. So I probably wouldn't expect too much change within that back three, but obviously, we look at the bench potentially after, and there's a lot more quality at centre half now waiting to come on. So yeah, I'd be surprised if McGuinness came in or Holmes came in, just off the back of that clean sheet as well, where everyone's been pretty solid.
And obviously, yeah, we've got some defensive cover now with McGuinness, but as you mentioned there, he's not really played much this season for Cardiff. I think they were quite aware that he was on his way out to us. So, Jamie, do you share that thought that you think he'll be sort of eased into it a bit?
Yeah, I definitely don't think he'll be thrown in from the start. I mean, I would expect him to be on the bench because he's clearly had a pre-season. He's clearly had a League Cup game, as Adam said. So he's certainly got the match fitness to be on the bench. I just wonder if Holmes could come in. I think given the height they've got up front, and again, I know we'll talk more on McGuinness, but in terms of where we see that back five going forwards, whether we could potentially shift Walters out to right wing back and Mengi out to the right of the three now, rather than do it when McGuinness is in, and maybe slot Holmes in that centre, just have that bit more height and I guess sort of battle hardenness at the back. Because I think we just need to protect from that set piece and protect from that long ball over the top. Because I think the last thing we want to do is go 1-0 down from a pretty silly goal to concede and then be sort of playing against the backs against the wall Preston, who are fighting for everything and will be fighting for everything given that situation that they're in. So maybe just to shore things up from the start, he might just do that move, as I said. So Mengi on the right of the three, Holmes in the middle, Bell on the left, then shift Walters out to wing back.
And we played Preston early in the season last time we were in the Championship and failed to beat them despite, dominating pretty much the entire game in terms of chances created. We lost 1-0 to a Brad Potts worldie, we'll call it, and it was a worldie. It probably should have won goal of the season, in my opinion. I presume neither of you are expecting anything similar from him this weekend. Obviously, don't want to jinx that.
I mean, not necessarily Brad Potts, but I know going to Deepdale last time that the goal that they scored, I think that was it 2-0 or 2-1. I can't remember what the score was. But I think that their first goal that they scored at Deepdale when I was up there last time was a bit of a worldie as well. I think again it was one of their Scandinavian or Nordic players. So it seems like they've got a general knack of scoring pretty outrageous goals against us. So yeah, obviously to defend against that, you hope you got your first choice goalkeeper who can pull off a blinding save, but clearly we've not got that either. So yeah, not to jinx it, but yeah, fingers crossed we can get a clean sheet or at the very least not concede an outrageous 30-yard strike.
And we've touched on it there, obviously. We're without Thomas Kaminski, so James Shea will be in net unless there is a bit of a surprise and Tim Krul does come in, but it doesn't look like he's favoured a second choice anymore. Are you expecting anything big from James Shea that may surprise us, Adam?
No, I think you know what you get with Shea. To be honest, there's certain areas of his game where you'd say always had room for improvement, but he's never really been in doubt in terms of his overall ability, and I think that's the reason why they've given him a new contract. He won't. I know he's probably not on the highest earner by any means, but we don't keep players on for the sake of it. So I have the utmost confidence in James Shea. I also have confidence in Tim Krul, but not as much as Shea. So if you're watching Tim, sorry, but for me, I'm a lot more confident with Shea in goal than Krul. And even if we thought longer term, if for some reason Kaminski was to be injured for a period of time, I'd personally be fully comfortable with Shea in goal. And then obviously the bench, I assume, will be filled by the youngster whose name escapes me at the moment.
Yeah, so Jameson Horlick is the young goalkeeper that's been in and around the squad recently. I just wanted to ask you, obviously, the players to look out for from Preston. We spoke to Preston podcast Deepdale Digest to get a pre-match thought, and they highlighted, and excuse our pronunciation of this, Mads Frogjard Jensen, who's one of their Nordic players. He plays in midfield, and he's a bit of a technical player. But who else are you looking out for, Jamie?
Yeah, I think just a bit of an insight to the listeners. We probably spent about 5 minutes before this pod rehearsing how to say it. We were on all the websites, how to pronounce. So yeah, Mads Fogjar Jensen obviously was the one that was picked out by Deepdale Digest. But no, I think for me the biggest threat is going to be that long ball. So they're two big men up top who again don't have overly easy names to pronounce. You got Jakobsen is probably like the easiest one, but you got Ford Arson as well, who's Icelandic. They've certainly got a tie with Scandinavia. But yeah, I just highlight those two in particular because obviously you back Mengi to defend well against them 1v1, but the last thing you want is from a set piece to lose a man or whatever. So I think that for me is the real danger to try to protect against.
And someone else who they have got up front and who did well for them last season as well is Will Keane, obviously former Man United striker quite a long time ago, but he's been linked away in the last few days. If he is to play, do you think he'd be a different threat, Adam?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't claim to know too much about him, but I don't think he's the same sort of mould of striker as the other two that we've spoken about. So he's obviously going to be one to watch. They've also got, I think, Sam Greenwood, who is probably more of that just off the striker player. He'll take up good positions. He's quite good technically as well, I think. So he's maybe not your out and out goal scorer, and I'll probably jinx that and he'll score a brace or something. But he's the one. He's also one that we're going to need to keep an eye on, and not give him too much influence in the game.
And Sam Greenwood's an interesting player, isn't it, Jamie? Because he's had quite a few opportunities and he's shown flashes of quality, but never really hit that consistency.
Yeah, I think I might be wrong, but he was on the edge of that Leeds academy for a little while and sort of threatened to get into their starting 11 for a couple of years. Obviously, didn't quite make it, so got to move away. And yeah, I think you always have to take into account where their footballing education has been, and quite clearly Leeds are a household name in the UK, and they clearly have a great academy. I mean, you just look at some of the prospects that have come through there. Obviously, no less than Archie Gray, who's gone on to Spurs in the summer. So quite clearly, he's had that real footballing education, and obviously was good enough to get a permanent move away in the Championship. So yeah, agree with Adam. He's obviously got that ability that we need to watch and be careful of.
And just before we move on, I'd like to get a score prediction from you guys. So, Adam, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm going to be confident this week, having previously gone for a defeat and a draw. I think given our clean sheet, off the back of our clean sheet and our defensive reinforcement, not so much Preston's inability to score because we could correct that for them comfortably, but I do think we will keep a clean sheet. And I think we'll take a couple of chances as well. So I'm going to go Preston 0, Luton 2.
And Jamie, will come to you next.
Well, I don't think we ever set a rule that we couldn't match a score, and I had 2-0 in my mind whilst Adam was speaking, so I'm gonna match him on that and go Luton 2, Preston 0.
So I also thought we'd score 2, but I'm not 100% confident we can keep a clean sheet. So I've gone 2-1. Just before we move on, I'd love to know your score predictions if you're watching or listening. So comment and let us know what you think. And if you're running a little score prediction league, we'd love to know what you're doing and who's winning and who's involved. We're going to take a quick break now, but when we come back, we'll be looking a bit more at our latest additions and someone we're very heavily linked with and potentially, when this comes out, may have announced. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter. I'm still joined by Jamie and Adam, and we're going to move on and talk a bit about some of the transfer business. It's been a few weeks, and Luton fans have been calling out for something to happen for quite a while. And yesterday, to our what was a bit of a surprise and also not a massive surprise, there was a double signing announcement. So in the morning, we had Liam Walsh announced, who's obviously been training with the club for a few weeks, And then in the evening, we had a late announcement of Mark McGuinness. So, Jamie, we'll start with a little bit on Liam Walsh. Obviously, we've discussed him a bit before, but what are your thoughts from what he's said since joining?
I mean, first of all, we signed a player. Yes. It's been nice to talk about actual signings. But no, I mean, the signing of Liam Walsh, obviously don't expect him to come in and be first choice by any stretch, right? I think Adam mentioned on previous pods, his minutes over the last, well, probably best part of 4 or 5 seasons now haven't been great, which probably is a bit nice, really. But yeah, I think he needs time just to come in and bed into the team, really get some probably 21 minutes under his belt, or sort of the odd appearance or sub off the bench here for us. And obviously got the League Cup coming up soon with QPR, so probably a good first game to play him in. So that's first of all is number one, right? I think forget him as a player in terms of his ability. Just he needs to get to that level where he is agile, where he is sort of sturdy enough to be able to play a championship game, because we all know how tough this league can be. And in terms of quality wise, I mean, yeah, he came from a Swansea team that are renowned for playing football, and I mean that in terms of the so-called attractive style of football. So quite clearly he was brought into that setup for a reason. I think Swansea do recruit fairly well in terms of recruiting the right players for the system that they want to play. So clearly he's got the technical ability, and yeah, I think it's one that we just need to back the club. I think there's been players over the past, right? If you look at, okay, albeit older names, but you got Cameron Jerome, you got Henry Lansbury, you got Ross Barkley last year. Okay, again at a higher level, but that we do have a knack for finding gems, and certainly on a free. So it's probably not one for us to assign any sort of expectation to. Just bring him in, and again we'll come on to other midfielders that we're linked with, or hopefully soon to be signing. And the fact that we are gives me a bit of comfort that we're not just relying on him to be that main man, which is a positive, and it allows him to really bed in, which is what he needs.
And Adam, do you share those thoughts, or do you think he'll get thrown straight in? Obviously, he's been training with us for a number of weeks now.
No, I mean, I completely share those thoughts, to be honest. I think, seen a couple of tweets in the last couple of days that in isolation as a midfielder, that signing is probably not what we would want or expect. It turns out that it may not be in isolation as our only midfielder. So it seems like a sensible move in terms of he's got some experience. Clearly he's got something. And it's a kind of a low cost, low risk in a sense, I would say. So I can see why they've done it. Edwards knows him, and if we can get 50% of his ability out of him, then it's definitely a good option to have in the squad and off the bench as well. But I don't think I'd be surprised if he gets thrown in even into the League Cup game. He might maybe 45 minutes or half an hour. I think there's probably an element of he's going to need to be training at our standard for another 3 weeks, probably. But again, yeah, could be wrong. They could see the cup game as a good opportunity to give him some game time.
And we'll move on to the transfer that's got people talking more. Obviously, it's been in the works and rumoured for some time now. But last night, as I mentioned, Mark McGuinness was announced who we've signed from Cardiff City. He's a 23-year-old, about 6'4", so he's a big physical presence, Adam. We spoke briefly about him earlier, about whether he'll come straight in, but we decided it probably wouldn't. But what do you think he brings to the side?
Well, yeah, I mean the height. He's going to be a physical presence, a dominating presence in both boxes, which is massive. Even we talk about our defending, but I don't think we've had too many kind of commanding centre halves when we have attacking corners. Locks does a good job, and Osho poked his toe on a couple, but someone that you think they could literally just plant their head straight on it, and he's got a bit of a knack for scoring some goals. So yeah, physical presence in both boxes. Just looking at his stats off the top, I think 30 games last season, he won 70% of his aerial duels, which is massive. I know we want to get the ball down and play, but you've got to do that off the back of winning those battles. So I think he'll be a big presence and a big influence. He might not bed straight in, as in Saturday, but I would expect him to be in the starting lineup fairly soon. Maybe even QPR home league game, and I think if he stays fit, he probably won't be coming out of the team.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter compare it to a bit of like a Sonny Bradley type signing, right? And I completely agree. I think it wasn't one that, when it was being rumoured about 2 weeks ago now, I wasn't overly hot on it. I think not necessarily because of him as a player, but more of the fee quoted. But now it seems like that 10 million number is significantly weighted towards add-ons. And fundamentally, if those add-ons are achieved, then that means one thing, and that's likely that we've got promotion to the Premier League. So in a way, who cares what we spent on a player if it means that was the outcome. So I think that I guess reward weighted fee, I think makes me a lot more open to the signing. And I think, yeah, I agree with Adam. Set piece threat. I can't remember the last time we scored a corner from an actual clean header. It might have been pinball, etc. But for a ball to be whipped into the box and have a centre half's forehead on the ball cleanly and just be sort of bullet headed in, and I can't really remember the last time that happened. So hopefully gives us that more threat. Slight concern in terms of Cardiff City fans' feedback from on the ball perspective. I feel like the style of play that we're wanting to play is that very much out from the back and really play football. That style, and it seems like he's not the best on the ball, but that doesn't mean to say that he just isn't good on the ball. It may be the way Cardiff are training. It may be that he hasn't focused on that in particular in recent years. So potentially after 6 to 12 months in our setup, then it might be that he comes good on the ball. So you just have to back the setup that we bring players into, right? And I think the players we signed, Walters and Baptiste, and now McGuinness, free of the more marquee type signings that we've signed this summer, I think all in all it looks good.
Just thinking on the whole centre halves attacking corners for us, and you say Sonny Bradley, because I remember when we signed him, he was scoring serious goals for Plymouth. He was scoring, I think one season he scored double digits in League 2 or League 1 or something, probably League 2. But he never really, apart from his Middlesbrough banger, I don't really remember him emulating that for us. So it will be interesting to see whether we can get our set pieces right in terms of targeting the likes of him and Adebayo, because there's nothing better than when you see a centre half absolutely bullet a header like we used to have with Chris Coyne and Curtis all those years ago.
Well, set pieces was something last season, particularly in the first half of the season, that really looked like a threat for us. There was a lot of teams struggling to deal with us in the Premier League, and then it just sort of dropped off in the second half of the season. And I don't know if that was a change of tactics in set pieces or just a complete lack of defenders we had at stages as well. But if Alfie can get those crosses into the box right, I think we've got the potential to cause some problems again. There was just one other thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of Mark McGuinness. I spoke to Tom Taylor, who's a Cardiff City fan, and he said that he was hoping he would become Cardiff City captain one day. He'd seen potential for that to be something that could materialise, and obviously we've bought him now. I thought our defence before Bell came back was looking like it was lacking leaders at points. So hopefully that's something he can bring in, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean, quite obviously we've lost our captain for the foreseeable with Locks, and Carlton Morris has taken that mantle as captain so far. And I think if you just look at a more of a long term perspective, obviously Carlton isn't that young anymore. So that there will come a time where we need to look to our younger players in the club for future captains, and maybe he's been brought in with that in mind. I think Mengi could be it one day, but if we're being honest with ourselves, he probably will be leaving Luton Town before that can even be a thing, unless we get promoted again. So yeah, I wouldn't bet against McGuinness being future Luton captain one day.
And we'll move on from Mark McGuinness because there is one more player that Luton have been very heavily linked, and we've seen well, it's basically all of the talk on social media is about this one player, and that is Tom Krauss, who has been at Mainz, he's been at Schalke. He was at RB Leipzig as well. I'm not sure how much he played there, but he's a midfielder. He's quite an imposing midfielder, and he's a very defensively capable midfielder, which is something that we've been calling out for on here. So, how excited are you about the potential signing of a German youth international that has been playing in the Bundesliga, Jamie?
Yeah, really excited. And again, I can't claim to know an awful lot about him, but I mean, yeah, if we just go through his career, he's RB Leipzig trained, and we all know that Red Bull setup is pretty strong in terms of developing youth players. He was capped at every German youth international level, which again says a lot. He got a loan to Nuremberg, and all the bits that I was reading up about Nuremberg in the second tier when they had him, it was almost as if you could replace him with Dewsbury Hall, and that was the feedback that we had about him when we had him in the championship. They absolutely adored him, and was really sad to see him go. Then got on move to Schalke, and by all accounts had a really good season at Schalke, and played really well despite them in the end getting relegated. And there's photos of him being absolutely distraught that Schalke went down, and obviously really bought into the life of a club. And Schalke are a huge German club. That, like, there's lots of German clubs in sort of like the lower tiers that are massive, and Schalke is one of those. And for someone to really buy into that club and be distraught about a relegation, and Schalke fans now are even saying, look, at £5 million, why can't we gamble on him and bring him in, because they loved what he did for them before. And then got a big move to Mainz. They paid €5 million for him a year ago, and it seems like it hasn't quite worked out for one reason or another. It seems like he's not the most technical on the ball, but defensively it seems like he's an out and out number 6. I was looking at a couple of those YouTube reels, right, which obviously you've got to take with a pinch of salt, but his agility to really press a man on the ball and really just hassle him on the ball and win it back. And I think I was looking at a stat, and I think he was in the 87th percentile in terms of possession won in the final third, which for a Luton side that really is keen to really press high up the pitch and win the ball back quickly, that's a stat that we clearly need to make use of. So all in all, it seems like he, for me, is an Alan Campbell again, but just that level above. And I loved Alan Campbell when he came in. Like, he was a player that was so easy to get behind in the Luton shirt because he gave it his all. And yeah, part of me is really sad that we're losing Alan Campbell, but if we can replace him with someone that is of a high quality, and someone that loves the Bundesliga as well, I'm just overall pretty buzzing with this signing. Hopefully when it happens, because all the things are pointing towards it happening fairly soon.
Yeah, you've obviously hinted that it's all pointing to look like it is going to happen. We've seen Luton players following him on social media over the last few days, and him following them back. We've seen him viewing some stories of some Luton content as well. So, yeah, everything is pointing in the direction that he is on his way in. And it is a real marquee signing for us. But signing someone from the Bundesliga when we've been relegated to the Championship, I mean, it's caught me by surprise, Adam. How about you?
Massively, yeah, massively. I mean, given our kind of slow start in the window, and we saw a lot of players a lot of what we might consider as fans' targets going elsewhere. We've spoken about them very openly on other podcasts, and it was a bit depressing, wasn't it? But then this came out of the blue the other night, and you think, even watching a 3-minute YouTube, it's really, really exciting. I mean, Jamie mentioned the possession one in the final third, but he's up there with tackles won, fouls committed, which you need your holding midfielder to be getting stuck in. Recoveries as well. So he seems like a bit of an all-action midfielder, just with an absolute love to defend as well. So yeah, I might go up to the brace tomorrow with some binoculars and just keep an eye on things, because it sounds like it's 99% done. And he sounds like exactly what we need in midfield. So super exciting. I'll be at the club shop seeing if they've got any e-sets to put on the shirt. if the shirt's in stock. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing him. Hopefully.
Yeah, and you've mentioned the ESETs there. I think if I know rightly, he would be the first Luton player to have an ESET on his name. Is that right, Jamie?
Yeah, I believe so. I actually don't believe we've had any German players. We've had German speaking or maybe German natives in terms of family, but not actually sort of people that are declared as German in terms of the international scene. So yeah, really exciting. I think, as you said, the Bundesliga is an elite level league. I mean, yes, it's not the first signing we've done from foreign shores, but Sliga was from the Croatian top flight and Hashieka was from the Belgium top flight, and both individually good leagues, but it's not they're not elite level leagues as far as the Bundesliga are. And to be in a Mainz side that survived and were in the Bundesliga last year and stayed up and by all accounts played pretty good football. Yeah, it's really exciting and a massive marquee signing for us to, as you say, be relegated out of the English top flight and still attract a German top flight player. I would love to know if he was our number one target or if he was maybe number 2 or 3. Obviously, certainly it would have been up there, but fly on the wall, part of me would love to know sort of where he was and where he was ranked on that shortlist.
Yeah, and I know as I say, we've been quite critical of our lack of intent or movement in the window. So if they've been holding off and waiting for this, then fair play, because it looks like an absolute gem. And I think McGuinness, there's so much potential with McGuinness, right? He's a ready-made player now to come into the team, but also serious potential. So, we get this one done, the second one done this week, then I would hold my hands up and admit that, they were worth waiting for, even though we've not necessarily seen them play yet. I think there is good work done in filling the centre-half gap and then potentially this centre midfield gap as well. So fair play to the club, well done to the scouts, and let's get this last one over the line.
And just last thing to add, I think Adam, you mentioned a couple of weeks ago in terms of the midfield profile that we had going into the summer in terms of Pelly, Clicker all sort of being latter stage of their career, sort of 30 plus, Nakamba as well. And obviously it's not clear in terms of the deal that we have to bring Krauss in, whether it's a loan or a permanent. But if it's a permanent, he's 23 years old, so it really de-ages that midfield a little bit and de-risks it going into future seasons. Because had we not recruited a younger profile of midfielder this summer, you go into whatever league you go into next season, whether it's the Premier League or the Championship, having 3 midfielders that are 31 plus and really needing to bring in some more youthful ones. So it definitely, for me, de-risks that midfield problem that could have presented itself pretty quickly.
There was just one last thing I wanted to touch on, and we were speaking about it off camera yesterday. The addition of a German into our midfield alongside Shandon Baptiste from Granada. Obviously, we've got marvellous Nakamba from Zimbabwe and Tahith Chong, who is sort of Dutch, Curacao. Will that give Luton the most, not just diverse midfield in the league, but also some of the more random nationalities?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, there's probably not another club in the country with that variation. But this, we can't forget the days where I know some of those players like Chong have come from domestic clubs, and Baptiste as well. But our scouting was just so like British based, and the fact we've been able to evolve over time as well. I remember when we started bringing through internationals, and they were like Wales or Ireland, which is fine. But now we are casting the net further, so it's great to see us kind of like evolving. And as Jamie said, like, is Krauss, has he been a target from the start? But even having a network or being aware of him or having the foresight to make that move at this time, you have to say fair play to the club for acting on it as well.
Yes, and I'm sure everyone listening to this is as excited about the business over the last couple of days and upcoming as we are. We'd love to know which player you're most excited to watch play for Luton, so be sure to let us know in the comments. But for now, that's everything from us. So before we go, just want to ask you one more time to like, share and subscribe the podcast and rate us 5 stars on audio platforms. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you at Preston. If you're going to Preston North End, maybe send some photos into the podcast, info@oakroadhatter, or let us know in the comments if you're also heading there. Thank you from me, thank you from Jamie, and thank you from Adam.